So how do you take something that's literally thousands of years old and make it work for us, right now in our world? That was the giant puzzle facing one man, Master Hsing Yun. And his goal wasn't just to keep Buddhism alive, he wanted it to actually thrive and tackle the problems we face today. So let's dive into his blueprint and see how he pulled off this incredible transformation. So there's this great story from the writer Yu Qiyu. He describes seeing this really quiet but super powerful moment. He saw Master Hsing Yun standing in front of a memorial for a past master, and he heard him whisper something like, "I did it. I did everything I said I would do." But for Yu Qiyu, who was watching this, that was a massive understatement. It wasn't just that he'd done it. It was that he had taken on some of the most complicated, world-class problems you could even think of. Okay, so what were these world-class historical problems he was up against? I mean, really understanding the challenges is the only way we can appreciate just how brilliant his solution was. All right, first up, a world of challenges. And look, this was so much bigger than just, building a few more temples. No, this was about a complete rethink of what Buddhism's role could even be in our fast-moving world. And that meant he had to face 8 very specific, very tough obstacles. So Yu Qiyu actually laid out these 8 major difficulties. And as you look at this list, you realize, wow, these could apply to almost any ancient tradition, right? Just think about it for a second. How do you navigate politics and war? How do you make a monastic life make sense to a modern family? And maybe the biggest one of all, how in the world do you get young, smart, educated people fired up about something that's 2,500 years old? I mean, any one of these would be a massive challenge. He took on all 8. So when you're staring down a list like that, where do you even start? Well, for him, the answer was simple: people. The very first step was to build a solid, organized community, something that could be the real engine for all the change that needed to happen. And this wasn't going to be your typical quiet, isolated monastery hidden away on a mountain. Not at all. He imagined what he called a modern Sangha, a whole community of monks and nuns who are actively involved in the world. They'd be the ones leading cultural projects, educational programs, charity work, you name it. This community was designed to be the absolute backbone for everything else. And the scale of this, it's just wild. We're talking over 1,200 disciples that he personally mentored and ordained. So this wasn't just some nice idea on paper. He literally built a huge, dedicated team from the ground up. This became the core of his new modern order. In fact, it became the largest monastic community in modern Chinese Buddhism. Just incredible. Okay, so you've built this amazing team. That's great, but how do you make it last? How do you make sure the whole thing doesn't just fall apart after one charismatic leader is gone? Well, that's where his blueprint gets really interesting. It all comes down to 2 key pillars: a solid system and a new way of thinking about education. And you can see the difference plain as day right here. The old way, it usually all hangs on one amazing, charismatic person. But what happens when they're not around anymore? The whole thing can just crumble. The Fo Guang Shan model is totally different. It's built on a system, a collective, transparent system where the institution is the important thing, not any one person. That's how you get stability. That's how you get a smooth transition of leadership. And Master Hsing Yun himself said it best: to lead the masses, rely on the system, not the individual. He just knew that if you wanted this thing to last, to really have long-term success, you needed a solid structure that didn't depend on him. And honestly, that one idea is probably the main reason they were able to grow all over the world without imploding. But a system is just a system. It's only as good as the people who are part of it. So what was the fuel for this new engine? What powered the whole thing? It all came down to a revolutionary approach to education. See, traditional religious schools, maybe you go for a few years, and that's it. He threw that model out. Instead, he created this lifelong educational pathway. It starts with the basics, sure, but then it actually encourages people to go out and get advanced degrees from universities all over the globe. And then, and this is the key part, they come back and put that knowledge to work in real, specialized jobs in culture or charity or media. What you end up with are leaders who have this deep spiritual core and real-world, modern professional skills. It's the best of both worlds. So now you've got this strong community. You got a blueprint for how to grow. And the impact was, well, it was huge. And it all started with changing how the public saw a Buddhist monk or nun in the first place. You know the old stereotype, right? The monk who's totally cut off from the world, living on some remote mountain. The new image that Fo Guang Shan created couldn't be more different.
We're talking about an engaged, highly educated community leader, someone whose whole focus is on serving people who are alive today and making society better. Suddenly you have monks who are also doctors and teachers and administrators. They prove that having a spiritual life and being a productive member of society aren't two different things.
And a huge piece of this was tearing down the old, rigid hierarchies. He introduced this idea of the four assemblies, which basically means the clergy and the regular members, the laity, are treated as equals. Everybody gets a say. Everybody has a role to play. And that was absolutely revolutionary. It meant you could tap into the skills and talents of the entire community, not just a handful of people at the top.
When they started to expand across the globe, they had this really unique strategy. Master Hsing Yun had this principle he called localization. And for him, that didn't mean going into a new place and trying to take over. It meant the exact opposite. It was about giving. The whole idea was to contribute to the local culture you were entering, to offer your resources, to help the community, and to live alongside other beliefs, not try to push them out.
And did that strategy work? Well, the results kind of speak for themselves, don't they? We're talking over 300 temples, scattered across more than 70 countries, with millions of members around the world. It's a genuine global force, and it was all built on these ideas of respect, education, and service. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? From this incredible story of making something ancient feel brand new? Well, it's a really powerful legacy, and it's full of lessons for pretty much any old tradition that's trying to figure out where it fits in today's world. The blueprint itself is actually pretty clear when you break it down. You start with a big vision to solve real problems. You build a strong modern community to make it happen. You power it all with a system that can grow and an education that never stops. And the result? A totally new public image and a reach that spans the entire globe. And this quote from Master Hsing Yun just wraps it all up perfectly. His vision for the future wasn't about tradition versus modernity. It was about combining them. It was about making sure everyone, clergy and laity, felt a sense of ownership. And it was about weaving these ideas into every part of life, from art and culture to everything else. And that really leaves us with one last big question. Because this story, it's about more than just one faith, right? It's a masterclass in renewal. It really makes you think, what other ancient traditions out there, whether they're in faith or culture or even business, could take this blueprint and use it, not just to survive, but to completely redesign themselves to help solve the problems we're all facing today?